I talk a lot about brand being your biggest competitive advantage. And I want to give you an example of a company I worked with that had a brand book, but it was not differentiated, it was not articulated, it was not actionable. And so I came in as a strategy consultant to be able to redefine the brand, to ensure that the brand was distinct, unique, and that we created an actionable brand book that allowed all of the employees to execute on brand. Okay, I see an opportunity here. Let's come in, let's take what works, let's take what's been effective, and then let's apply it and define it in a new way that is clear and actionable for the entire team. Now, what we did is we introduced two different documents. The first document is what we call the brand book, and that's exactly what you'd expect. But how we defined it was a little bit more like a coffee table book. It should be beautiful, it should be informative, but flip through it, get the gist. And that can be for the entire company. But that's really where we allowed a lot of the decision-making to happen. And so we worked with the executive team and the founder and really kind of went through slide by slide and ensured that this reflects their ambition, this differentiates themselves from the competition, but it's also clear and actionable for the team. What we did was spun out a second document, what I call the brand operating system. Now, if we think about that first document as kind of a coffee table book, this next document is a little bit more like an IKEA instruction manual. But instead of putting together bookshelves and tables, we're putting together marketing. And so we took everything from the brand book that was meant for a general population, and we applied that more granularly to the brand operating system that was really meant for marketers. Programmatic, CRM, brand. This is a little bit more of like, how do we break down all the touch points? So we define the brand through the lens of growth, through the lens of media, and through the lens of email marketing. And so we took all of those components and made it very easy for specific teams to kind of look through and know how to assemble a campaign that allows ZenBusiness to be consistent, to be differentiated, and it gives entrepreneurs a reason to choose them over the competition. So let me jump into the brand book that we started to work on. Now, there's a few key differences with our version. One, we are making an assumption that the team knows what brand is. So we bypass defining what a brand is. They've inserted a VP of brand that his whole job is to educate the team on what brand is. And so we felt like we can kind of just skip ahead and get right to it. And so a lot of the stuff stays the same. As a former creative director, we got to start with a manifesto. We got to pull people in with a story and understand why we're here and what we're doing and how this document can help. And what I really challenge myself with is, how do we remove all of the jargon? How do we remove all of the buzzwords that happen in marketing? So instead of saying this is a brand book, what is this thing? Well, this is our guide. And that's really what I wanted to position this document as, is a guide for the team. It's a North Star, not a rule book. And what we do is we explain who we are and what we stand for and how we show up together. It gets everyone on the same page. And we wanted to build this foundation so that teams are a little bit more free in expressing as long as they stick with the rules and the guidelines and the intent that was documented. So the goal is consistency. Any brand that is inconsistent loses. So we wanted to be consistent and stay true to ourselves. So we define what this thing is, and then we say, okay, well, now what? Well, how do you use it? This is a little bit more instructional. How to use it if you're looking for inspiration or writing an email or need to check brand colors. All of that exists here, but we wanted to state it simply and clearly so no one was confused. Now, again, a lot of the information is the same. We just laid it out slightly differently, but we've got our founding story, the two founders here. We talk about our mission. We talk about our guiding principle. Now, this is interesting. I'm a solopreneur. I'm actually a ZenBusiness customer. I know how chaotic entrepreneurship is. And so we came upon this line of our whole reason for being is to be the calm in the chaos. How can we calm the noise and quiet the noise that is entrepreneurship and be a trusted source? So that kind of grew over time as we worked more and more. But it's interesting to think about, this is the ultimate filter for this team. If this product launch or this email isn't calming the chaos, we shouldn't do it. And we agreed on that in theory. From the C-suite all the way down, we need to be the calm the chaos. So our marketing cannot be rushed or hurried. Our executions have to be thoughtful, but we cannot be reactive. We have to be strategic. We have to slow things down and make it very calm for the entrepreneur who's just enduring nothing but chaos. We've got our vision and the opportunity. There's 100 million Americans that are building something of their own, and we wanted all of them, but we had to position ourselves as the solution by providing calm in the chaos. So we talk about our role, right? It's important to remember as a business, we're in service of our customers. It's not about us, it's about them. And so the CMO had talked about being a champion. How can we champion our entrepreneurs? It's not about us. Our tools, our services, our products are for them, the entrepreneur. Now, this was a really interesting graph. The problem was, the big picture problem was, ZenBusiness was all about conversion. They have amazing tools and services and products, but it's behind a paywall. So they were very narrowly focused on, if you're going to start and protect and grow your business, ZenBusiness is there for you. The problem is all those wonderful tools and products were behind a paywall. So they were basically just converting, and they ran out of people to convert. And so an opportunity we identified was, how do we go from being a utility to become an ally? That's really part of brand, is this emotional connection. How do I think about ZenBusiness and know that they've got my back, that they support me, not just because of the products, but because they're there all along. And so the brand team really opened up the aperture. We're not just going to focus on folks who are starting a business. We're going to focus on folks who are dreaming and maybe even planning, but they're not ready yet. We're going to be there for them, and we're going to be an ally. We're going to give them some products and services to use so that we build trust over time, so that we become the source that they go to because we've had it back from the beginning before they were even a customer. That's really, really critical. And I give props to the team for thinking about that, because it's a hard decision to make. But they did it. Now, instead of focusing on this narrow little lane, they're going to talk to people that are dreaming about a business, all the way to people who are thriving in their business. And they're going to create products and services all along the way to support each of these parts of the journey. So we talk about our approach. We talk about being an ally. So I think, we see this here, becoming an ally, as a headline, but we don't really define what it means. So we need to be clear. What do we mean by becoming an ally? We're going to provide entrepreneurs with unrivaled products, experience, and communication. We're going to be there for them. We're not just going to be a transaction. We're going to have their back. So another quick little graph that we introduced, and it's a spectrum. So if we think about the left side, when we're creating awareness, this is really just to introduce ourselves as a company and as a brand. For people to become customers, they need to know you, like you, trust you, and then they choose you. So there's a lot of steps. People aren't going to know, like, and trust you if you're just selling them something. But if you open up and introduce yourself, and we lead with Zen, and we inspire the dream, and we can show the possibility and reinforce that we are calm in the chaos, people are going to know about that, and they're going to like it. And so we wanted to just talk about our marketing, a little bit more of like, let's just be Zen and less business. Now, as we go to the right side of this spectrum, we're going to be a little less Zen and all about business. This is where we close. This is where we convert. We've earned trust over time. And so we're going to lean into the business, and we're going to be very direct about the tools and the outcomes and how we deliver results. This is where we want to convert them. So Zen on the left and business on the right, which is pretty incredible. So it's a spectrum that I think it's going to help everyone. We talked about, as a marketer, if you're going to write a brief, you can drop a dot on this line and really help inform, are we just creating awareness? Or we want to be considered amongst other competitors, or do we want to convert them? So this is kind of a wayfinding device for marketers and for strategy. Now, as every company, they have operating principles. We came up with a bunch, but the team had said, we already say a few things pretty consistently and are all hands with these phrases. And so we made them work. We incorporated them into this document so that everyone can rally around these principles. And again, internally, how do they operate? What are the expectations? And then just the last little bit, because this is what I work on, is the voice. How do we create a unique, distinctive voice that can be consistent and that can scale? What happens a lot with marketing teams, especially decentralized remote teams, everyone thinks they know the brand. They kind of make it up as they go. When you don't document your tenets, everybody who writes creates from a different tone or perspective or personality. And then the brand sounds fragmented on social, on email, on the landing page. How do we create consistency without being super rigid? So again, to be perceived as an ally, we need to speak like a guide. We're going to write like we talk. We don't want corporate jargon, just guidance from someone who's been down this road before. Our entrepreneurs, they're just starting. But as ZenBusiness, we've done this probably more than 1,000 times. And that difference is where we guide like an ally. So we really want to be perceived as a guide. We want to provide that calm in the chaos, and we want to position ourselves as a guide. We're going to support you on your journey. In order to do that, we're going to be grounded, we're going to be empowering, and we're going to be personal. And so we define what those mean so that, again, there's no confusion on what these three tenets mean. But together, this is going to create the unique, consistent voice that's going to differentiate. And then we just talk about voice and action. So I always like this spectrum of everything needs to be grounded. If we're going to be calm and we're going to act like a guide, we should be grounded. That's the baseline. And you can build on that. So then you can incorporate empowering and personal, and they work together based on what we know about the entrepreneur and their journey. We need to empower them to get to the next phase. We want to personalize their experience because we know what they're going through. The more context we have, the more personal we can be, and the clearer the next step, the more empowering we should be. So all three of these work together really nicely to become a guide. So that was just a little flyover on the brand book that we redeveloped. I'm hoping, and it sounds like the consensus was, it was much clearer, it was much more actionable, it was more digestible, it caused less confusion. In fact, it added a ton of clarity that relieved the team, which always feels good to hear. I just want to throw up real quick the brand operating system that I talked about. This is pretty unique. I haven't seen this a lot in different organizations I've supported or worked, but I've started to incorporate this. And so again, in order to keep the brand book concise and focused, you don't want to have everything. I think you need what's important. What is the brand? Truly, not the product, not the company, the brand. How do we sound? Why do we exist? What problem do we solve? How do we position ourselves? The next one is all about how do you apply that to marketing? And so I'm just going to flash this up and just kind of do a flyover just to show you, but this is really meant to help the marketers, vendors, agency partners. Again, the more folks you have supporting, the more fragmented this stuff becomes. So how do you create a playbook that's concise and clear? All right, so I've coined this the brand operating system. This is really a decision-making mechanism to ensure that everyone has the right input to make decisions and create consistent, intentional marketing. This is really your assembly guide. It's clear instructions for building marketing materials, campaigns, and content on behalf of ZenBusiness. Anyone who executes marketing or brand, internal teams, vendors, freelancers, new hires, this is how you build. Now, we thought it was important to remind everybody, I think as soon as we start executing, we lose sight of who is this for. For ZenBusiness, it's for entrepreneurs. And so we wanted to ground this entire document in reminding everybody, entrepreneurs building something of their own is their life's work. And it's super, super important. So we need to take it, seriously. Now we talk about the avatars and archetypes and who it's for, which is super important. Here's this Zen and business spectrum again. Because we've introduced it in the brand book, we're just doing a quick little flyover, but think about awareness as emotional. We want to inspire and provide calm. On the right side of this spectrum, we want to have confidence and proof, right? So there's a really wonderful spectrum that we introduced to companies to help them break it down. Now we talk about the funnel, because this was language that this client used. I know the funnel becomes a little more fragmented with all the different platforms, but this was still very relevant for this client. And so when we talk about awareness, there's that Zen. And when we talk about conversion, there's the business, right? So this still kind of works. We went so far as to even break down if we're going to use an out-of-home ad. How does an awareness ad versus a consideration ad versus a conversion ad look? And it's really defining the components of what makes this conversion versus awareness. Now, here's really a little bit more broken down. We kind of nodded at this in the brand book, but these are our differentiators. And they have this line that we inherited: business is complicated, we make it easy. And that's so incredible. I'd like to see it everywhere, but they got to back it up. And I think they're on their way to do that. But in order to do that, in order to believe that, we had to have some value propositions. So we have tech and humanity, and we have a couple bullet points. We've got personalized ease and pay it forward together. Now, these bullet points need to show up in marketing, right? You can take a bullet point from pay it forward together and create a piece of content. And together, you can have a pretty robust campaign, because these are the proof points that we pull from to show in our advertising. So we talk about this line, business is complicated, Zen business makes it easy. We define each of these components, right? This line is great, but if no one has the context or understands the meaning behind it, it becomes a little frivolous. And so again, we wanted to be very clear on why each of these words are there, and we broke it down as such. And then again, as you'd expect, we kind of remind everybody our voice, our tone, and even just some instruction on how to write for awareness all the way to conversion. What's interesting is we've created these quick start guides. And we've created this little bit of an ad-lib formula. So again, in the interest of making it simpler for marketers, if we say this is a paid ad, choose your medium, or pick the persona about what are we trying to reinforce, so insert that reason to believe or value proposition, and then what do we want it to achieve? This is the funnel. So if we create this ad-lib formula, we can then look at these quick start guides. So these are all touch points that were important to this client. Online video, TikTok, Instagram, landing page. So we defined and built little guides for each of these touch points so that the head of performance can basically click on this slide and understand how to create display ads that are on brand. And so we did an overview, and then we did the ad lib up top. We're going to create a performance banner for geo-targeted states about speed to achieve conversion. And that's what this looks like. The goal is not to be prescriptive, but so the result is inevitable. We want to remove the guesswork as much as possible. That's why this is an operating system like an IKEA instruction manual. So that's just kind of a smattering of the work we've done. I'll just end on the fun stuff, which is the creative examples. Now, the team wasn't ready for out of home or a big integrated campaign, but the last thing we wanted to do was be nearsighted and not set them up for future success. So while they're not ready for this work, we wanted to put it in here so when they are, they can look at it, review it, and be able to augment as needed. So we talk about awareness. And I love the little idea up top, Zen and business. We're going to be more Zen than we are business here. So we're not going to talk about ourselves. We're going to introduce ourselves. For example, go into business with yourself, Zen business. That's an awareness out-of-home ad. It's going to be top of mind. We're introducing ourselves. You can kind of connect the dots. And then we get into consideration. Now you see Zen and business are a little bit more 50-50. So we're going to work a little harder. Turn your DIY into an LLC. We're name dropping products and relevant terms. Form an LLC and make some real dough, some personality, some humor. We've got a baker here. So we're getting into the mindset and hopefully differentiating ourselves amongst the competition. That's consideration. And then conversion is all about just convert. Let's talk about our products. Let's have proof points. Velo is their AI tool that they're launching, and it explains what that is. And then we talk a lot about display. We see a lot more display in conversion than we do in awareness, so we kind of blew that out a little bit. Direct mail. So as you can see, we've got a pretty robust campaign if they're ready to execute. Maybe they're not, but the whole point is to arm their team with what they need when they need it so that they can go create compelling, consistent work. Now, coming back to the start, the issue was they had a brand book, but you could tell it wasn't finding its way out into the marketing. It was not consistent. It was not clear. It was not actionable. So we came in, took what was working and filled in the gaps and made it a lot more focused and had to make a lot of decisions on what to do and what not to do. And the whole goal of this is to create a filter for leadership, for the ICs, for everybody in the org, what we do or what we don't do. So there's a lot of work done because it was a 10-year-old company that I think is doing about 100 million a year. So they required a lot more thoroughness and a lot more depth in the work because they're ready to now create awareness. And we need to define what it is and be able to document the decisions we made so that the team is empowered to scale. Now, in closing, if I can implore any of you, if you have a brand book, look at it, review it, show it to someone who doesn't have the context. Would they be able to execute on brand? If not, I think you got to go back under the hood and figure it out. And I'd encourage you to make decisions and then document them, distribute to your team so that they can deploy. Decide, document, distribute, deploy. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks, y'all.